It is now my honor and pleasure to give the floor to His Excellency Alexander Schallenberg, Federal Minister for European and International Affairs of Austria.
Mr. President, dear Axel, it's actually a rare occasion where the person presiding the General Assembly and the person here at the rostrum are both Austrians. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, when we met in this hall last year, many, including myself, referred to the challenging times we were facing. A world riddled by uncertainty, growing divisions, and rising insecurity. A backsliding and hard-earned development gains, a backlash against the universality of human rights. Looking back on the past 12 months, we must admit that the sense of being in a permanent state of emergency has actually not decreased. On the contrary, it has even deepened. Russia relentlessly pursues its full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine. A violation of the UN Charter, the most basic rules that we all in this room agreed upon, that still is shocking today. Yes, my country, Austria, is a militarily neutral country. But neutrality doesn't mean and never meant indifference. We know very well that a world in which Russia succeeds in shifting borders with tanks and rockets is a world a lot more dangerous to all of us. After 946 days, I can only repeat that, 946 days of unspeakable human suffering and destruction, it is high time to return to diplomacy. Nobody wants, nobody deserves peace more than the people in Ukraine, but a negotiated peace, not a dictate from Moscow. And my friends, actually I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by the conversations with many partners in this room I had over the last couple of weeks, some of them from far beyond Europe's borders. Encouraged that no matter where we stand, geographically, politically, or as far as ideology is concerned, we can all agree on the most basic principles of international laws, those principles enshrined in the UN Charter. They should be the bedrock of any negotiation leading to a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace for Ukraine. And let me be very clear. There cannot be, and there shouldn't be, negotiations on Ukraine without Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, in the Middle East, the barbaric terror attack of Hamas against Israel has brought a new dimension of devastation to a region not lacking in violence. Israelis are traumatized by the slaughter, torture, and sexual violence of October the 7th. Hostages are still being kept by the terrorists, including an Austrian father of 2 small children. And Palestinians in Gaza are facing starvation and disease in what can only be described as an humanitarian tragedy. All of this is truly heartbreaking. International humanitarian law, to be very clear, is non-negotiable. It applies everywhere, at all times, for everybody. The protection of civilians has to be and must be paramount. We need a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire to get the hostages out of Gaza and humanitarian aid into Gaza. And we need this ceasefire now. What we definitely don't need is any side adding fuel to the fire. It is wishful thinking to believe that the full-scale escalation between Israel and Hezbollah could be controlled. The result would be a firestorm engulfing the whole region and beyond. And in the end, everybody would lose. I still believe that there are enough reasonable voices and forces in the region wanting to work towards a political solution, a lasting political solution. a solution enabling us to continue with the normalization between Israel and the Arab world, a solution where we can finally realize the two-state solution. In my eyes, the only feasible and imaginable solution allowing Israelis and Palestinians to live side by side in peace and security. Other crisis hotspots are equally disastrous, but they get too little public attention. In Sudan, famine looms for millions of people, but the generals care more about power than their own people. While in Haiti, stabilization is slow to come after a total collapse of the state. Amidst all of this, humanity itself is facing fundamental questions with accelerating climate change, environmental disasters, and the rise of artificial intelligence. Dear colleagues, there's no sugarcoating it. We are living in times of uncertainty, compounded by rising political, economic, and ideological tensions. We see shifts and cracks, bilaterally, regionally, and on multilateral level. I recently came across a statement that is very simple, but it is true. In the past, we actually believed that we knew our future. Well, my friends, this bubble of wishful thinking has burst once and for all. The pendulum is swinging from global integration towards global fragmentation. Isolation, protectionism, nationalism are on the rise, as zero-sum mentality is spreading, tempting us to divide partners and countries into either you're with me or you're against me, or even into ghosting or canceling others, as if foreign policy worked like social media. And around the globe, there are whole legions of doomsday prophets, forces at the fringes of the political spectrum, capitalizing on people's doubts and fears. The business model is quick fixes and apparent easy answers. The agenda is sowing discord. And yes, Austria is no exception. Coming Sunday, we will have parliamentary elections in my country. And also in Austria, some political forces are offering tempting but false solutions, even deliberately echoing the narratives of those forces which are trying to weaken our open and pluralistic societies, which are working against a strong and united Europe. To counter this, we need a strong center. We need to keep our nerves. We have to stay on message. We need to make sure that this era of doubt and anxiety doesn't become an era of fear. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that fear is a poor guide, especially in politics. And yes, our global order is changing. And yes, the world has become more complex. Some would even say it has become more frightening. But I'm deeply convinced that we have to stand up and defend the rules-based international system. And we have to defend it with all means at our disposal. We must not be afraid to take a clear stance. It is worth being defended because it is and remains the best, and I would even say the only guarantee for our security, for our stability, and for our prosperity. For countries like Austria, it is paramount. We are dependent on this system, a system that respects the rule of law, a system that respects international law, a system that honors the principle of pacta sunt servanda, a system where might does not make right. And it is an illusion to believe that there's anything to gain from demolishing or undermining the rules-based international system. If we lose it, everybody in this room will lose. I'm not denying that we are in the midst of a systemic rivalry. There are some actors who consider open and democratic societies not only as a challenge, but even as a threat. However, in the face of the turmoil and upheavals of the last few years, societies based on freedom, pluralism, and individual rights have proven themselves stronger, more adaptive, more flexible, and more resilient than most of us even believed ourselves. What we need most now, ladies and gentlemen, in this moment, is trust and confidence. Trust in our own capacities. Trust in our own principles. So my appeal today is very clear. Let us be more confident in our own strength. Yes, Austria will always be ready to defend its own interests, its values, its principles. But at the same time, we will always have the courage to look for the middle ground, to search the compromise. Because we know that defending our multilateral system, defending our rules-based international order, means to reform it. Our system of global governance is simply not delivering anymore. It is not inclusive enough. The Security Council, as it stands now, reflects a world that is long gone. And I believe it's actually unacceptable that we are held hostage so easily by the will of a handful of countries. We, as Austrians, and the Austrian government, we commit ourselves to making the Security Council more effective, more inclusive, and more accountable, including through our candidature for the non-permanent seat at elections in 2026. Austria will continue to champion a sensible and a pragmatic multilateralism based on our genuine will for compromise, for dialogue. Despite the current fragmentations of the global order, our world will simply remain interdependent. We will not be able to raise the drawbridges, to decouple, to cancel, to ghost, as some make us to believe. This is a magical thinking. We need to face the challenges and complexities of our times head-on and together, with a healthy dose of realism and more confidence in our own capacities, principles, and strength. Thank you very much.
I thank His Excellency Alexander Schallenberg, Federal Minister for European and International Affairs of Austria, and also for the kind words directed to the Chair.